I've been touring for about 2, 3 years now, right? You guys are actually the third show out of a 50 show tour we're doing in the next 3 months, right? So I'm like, still kind of nervous. I've been kind of on break for about a month now. So whenever you guys are on break, we're on break, right? And whenever you guys are in school, we're touring. And I love my job. I love being able to do this. But it almost came to a halt last September, or last summer. See, the thing is, like, because I'm home when you guys are home, I'm stuck at home doing nothing, but I'm there with the dog, right? And we just chill. My wife, meanwhile, is working for like 12-hour days, right? 12-hour shifts. And she'll come home and have all this pent-up energy. So I start to bother the hell out of her, right? I'm like poking at her, let's go out, let's do this, let's go, I've been at home doing nothing. And of course, she's so tired, she's like, oh my God, please leave me alone. Go back out on the road because you're like making me exhausted, right? You know what I mean? So, that last summer, she was like, you know what, you need to just go away. Like, go on vacation, do something. I'm like, where am I supposed to go? She was like, well, go to California. Go visit your mom, go visit your siblings. You haven't seen them in a while. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go do that. So I went to California to visit my mom, my brother, and my 2 sisters, right? And, um, and this is basically what happens in California, right? My sister would go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, get home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, be home by 3. And then from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, when her man gets off, we would sit on the couch, on our laptops, and watch TV and say nothing to each other, right? You ever love someone and be so close to someone that you don't need to entertain each other anymore? You can just sit there in complete silence and you just love that quality time. That's what my sister and I did for 2, 3 weeks straight, right? And on the last day that I was supposed to fly back to Florida, she comes home from work at 11. And I'm like, what are you doing home so early? She's like, well, I've had this headache. It hasn't gone away for 3 days. And it's just bothering me that I needed to leave. Now, my sister will not call out of work for anything, right? She's the most healthiest person, I mean, except for her liver, because her and Hennessy have a very important relationship. Like, if every family has that one person who's always pouring shots, that's my sister, right? So for her to call out of work, it must have been a big deal, because she doesn't just do that. So my mom, being all freaked out, was like, we're going to take you to the ER to see what's going on. I'm like, tell you what, you guys go to the ER, I got to finish packing, call me later, let me know. 2, 3 hours later, I get a phone call from my sister. She's like, yeah, so they found a tumor in my brain. I'm like, oh, crap, right? So I call my flight, and I'm like, listen, I can't make it out tonight. I'm going to fly out in a couple days. I need to make sure my sister's all right. I went to the ER, and my sister was like, well, it looks like it's not cancerous, which is awesome. It's on the surface. Now, the doctor says it should be a pretty routine procedure. They're just going to cut me open, take it out. I mean, it's still brain surgery, so there is still some risk, but the doctor feels very confident that everything will be okay, because it looks like I've had this since I was like 14, and that's why I've always been having migraines. I'm like, cool, I'm going to go back to Florida, call me, let me know how it goes. I go back to Florida. That Monday, she goes into surgery. That Tuesday, I call up her fiance. I'm like, how's my sister? She's like, oh, she's coming around. She's starting to wake up now, and she can't move some of her extremities, but it looks like she's all right. She recognized me and everything. I'm like, cool. Thursday morning, I get a frantic phone call from my mom saying, listen, they rushed your sister back to the ICU because it looks like one of her veins hemorrhaged in her brain, right? And now she's bleeding and it won't stop. And they're trying to get the bleeding to stop because it's just hemorrhaged. I'm like, and she fell into a coma, so you need to get back here. And so I flew back to California, and by that Monday, the doctors had already pronounced my sister brain dead, and by Saturday, we were burying her already. This has happened like back in August. So my agent calls me up, was like, look, you need us to cancel your shows, we'll cancel it. And I was like ready to say, like, yeah, let's not, because I can't deal with that right now. But then we had one more show with Cornell, and I told my agent, let's do that show at least, because I mean, at least I need to make money, because I've been flying back and forth, and I need to replenish some of my funds. So I did the show in Cornell, and it was just like this. The audience was awesome, the energy was amazing, and at the end of the show, I talked to so many people, and they just lifted me up so much that I remembered why I do this for a living, right? So that's why I kind of wrote this, and that's why I started touring, because no matter what, if I don't tour, then that's like my sister dying in vain. But by me going out and letting people know her story and letting them know my story, it lets people know that you're not alone, that we all face something, right? And we all share in our misery together sometimes, and we learn from each other's misery. So I'm going to do my poem, and this is the poem that I wrote for my sister. I hope you like it. Normally there's music, right? My brother-in-law, who usually does a guitar for me, is not here. Let me ask you, Sam, do you know how to play any, like a ballad on your guitar? This is a simple, maybe 3 chords that just sound cool and like kind of what do you call it when you freestyle? It's not freestyle. Right?
Improv.
Improvise. Can you improv guitar or no?
Honestly, no.
Okay. Okay, then I don't want to risk it. Like, oh, bring it out! Starts scrubbing and things. Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're gonna do it without it. You can do it for us. Could you do like a really cool, like nice melody, like yeah, if you can. Let's see what you got.
The guitar that's left-handed. If you don't mind.
Convenient.
Wow, that's a lot of love. It's almost like, like guitarists won't let each other like.
It's a no. You can't. No.
This is a great call.
Jordan, don't drop it.
Caress that guitar the same way you would caress if it was hurt. All right, like that's it.
That facial expression of.
That's my point. Gently. You know what I mean?
Just the brows.
Let me see what you can do. Just, it could be soft and simple, man. It would be like just perfect. That's perfect. Okay, we're good. All right. When the snow falls in the winter, the woolly caterpillar crawls into a crevice and freezes to death. Its blood stops flowing. Its lungs hardens into ice. Its heart comes slowly to a halt. The heart is always the last to go. But when the snow melts in the spring, the ice thaws from its ventricles, the crystals dissolve from its lungs, and just as slowly as it died, the woolly caterpillar awakens and comes back to life. For 120 hours, we waited for my sister to wake up. My family mumbling prayers around the doctor who tells us she fell into a coma when a blood vessel hemorrhaged, and my father hasn't stopped praying since. My stepfather searching the eyes of doctors for the answers to those prayers. My siblings pushing me into the room as though I could perform a miracle. My mother making twin towers of my arms the way she crashes into them now, while I attempted to believe that my faith far exceeds science and God would awaken her somehow. Awaken, sweet sister. Tell me that my tears the size of mustard seeds will fall upon your cheek and move the mountain of swelling in your brain. Tell me that the same God who makes all things possible can still live up to his name, because right now that name belongs to your mother, who's cursing God for being too coward to make up his own mind as she stares at the medical forms granting the hospital permission to let you die. If he wants her, then take her, she says. Who am I to decide? And by her side is your fiancé, whose fists are stones he's ready to throw if the doctor mentions organ donation just one more time. But your father, he sits still praying at your bedside, wrapping rosaries around your hands and tucking prayer cards behind your neck. God will resurrect my daughter, he says. Please, God, tell me she'll resurrect. How do I respond? How do I agree when the tubes of your IV intertwines around my throat, strangles my voice every time I plead, awaken, sweet sister. Make this poem easier to write. Tonight, pull out the respirator in your throat and speak the words that will end this poem brighter than how it begun. Remove the tubes and we'll blow kisses into your veins, that you may know where the true source of your life comes from, how it comes from your heart, how in this hurricane world you broke it in tiny pieces, dropped them like care packages on our laps. You always had enough of it to give, which is why there are 200 people in the waiting room now, ready to give it back in case you need it to live. But on the 7th day, the doctor gave us the results of the last test my sister will ever take, and I swear I'm not built for earthquakes like that. My knees buckling like a bridge, my arms shaking too much to catch another one of my mother's crash landings. None of us was left standing. We were all falling through the cracks, falling until we hit the floor of her room that night. This is what rock bottom must look like. The nurse disconnecting her machines, our hands stretching to touch a part of her as we wailed, our tears dropping as fast as her heartbeat, our sanity vanishing with her breath. Faster it faded, my stepfather stroking her face. Faster it faded, my father presses her hand to his cheek. Faster it faded, we're still waiting on a miracle. Faster it faded, my face planted to my mother's belly. Mommy, this hurts. Faster it faded, and then it was finished. The monitors dropped to 0, and as her breath emptied and her heartbeat slowed, her fiancé removes the ring from her finger, ties it to his necklace, and says, how fitting. It was her heart that was the last to go. It was silent after that, silent as my mother reaches over to close her daughter's eyes. My stepfather releases a long-awaited sigh. My sibling straightens the creases in her blanket while my father unravels the rosary from her hands, takes the prayer cards from behind her neck and slips them into his pocket,
places a kiss on her forehead, her chest, and both her shoulders. Put in a good word to God for us, he says. And that's when I knew that all along we had failed to see the light at the end of this tunnel she was going through. Because while we were praying for her awakening, the awakening was really meant for us, to remind us that life is a coma we can still choose to wake up from. That faith means not having to wait for the sun to come, because sometimes the sun doesn't come, but we can still rise on our own. Her last breath has already blown life into the candles of our bones, with nothing more but a wish that we may live more fully. The woolly caterpillar freezes to death in the winter and comes back to life in the spring. For 14 years, it goes through the same cycle of awakening, waiting until the final year when its work is complete, then spins itself into a cocoon to be reborn a moth and fly away for good. So sleep now, sweet sister. You've surrendered your life for too many winters. We'll take it from here. Sleep now wherever you wake. May you be reborn with wings on your back. Fly into the sun, knowing that when our own winter ends, spring will come and we'll see each other again. But until then, yeah, put in a good word to God for us.